The story can't be a myth, but the idol be true. All right. So let me show you Dagon's children present day. All right. And this has to do with a documentary. This has to do with a documentary that they're trying to use to scare you. All right. It's a documentary on Netflix called Pandemic. Now, Bill Gates in 2015, we've been tracking this lame effort since 2015. Bill Gates came out in 2015 and did this big old article about 66 million people could die over another bird flu pandemic. 2015, this is 5 years ago, y'all. They've been setting you up. So another name for that god, Dagon, all right? Another name for that god, Dagon, is Pan. This is where they get the word panic from. This is the word where they get the word pandemic from. This is the root word of Babylon. Baal and Pan are the same god. Babylon is confusion. Pan causes confusion. Pan causes terror. Pan causes panic. They have a worship system called pantheism. The Greeks worshiped the god Pan, who was a half man, half goat, who used to rape women, literally. Pan rapes women. Panic. Yeah. This is worship. So they come out with a documentary called Pandemic. Already in the door. For those who know that this is an artificial, man-made disaster meant to have you give them authority over your lives to come up with the solution to the problem of the pandemic. So they create the problem, then you give them the power to come and do to you that which they already want to do, but they know they don't have the authority to do it. They don't have the authority or the might to overpower you. They don't have the authority or the might. You have to give them permission. So they create artificial, manufactured, man-made disasters to cause panic, strife. And then they always have a neutral, supposed spiritual figure. This is always the Pope, who's supposed to step in and save the day with the solution, who is the high priest of pantheism. Who is the high priest of Washington, D.C.? Who created the European Union? They signed let me show you how crazy this thing is, right? So they signed a treaty into law in 1951. So they don't officially put the European Union out in the public until 1993. But they went to the Vatican and they signed a treaty. The Treaty of Rome in 1951. So they put the European Union together 40 years before. Yo, this is all a game. This is all a charade. They playing with your lives. But you know what's crazy? all over the world. They sacrificing these people, sacrificing lives. And the one group that got the ability to step on the stage and do to Goliath the same thing that David did is caught up in the Hollywood motion picture. So what we trying to do is, I'm putting together a schedule. I'm gonna show y'all bits and pieces. And then we're gonna do a casting call. We're gonna do a search. There was a young man that did a documentary called What the Health a couple years ago. And he exposed the same thing he exposed in how the Center for Disease Control, the Food and Drug Administration, they put plutonium, they put lunch meat, sliced lunch meat, ham, turkey, regular cold cuts, as a level 1 carcinogen. The World Health Organization, Center for Disease, level 1 carcinogen. You know what else is a level 1 carcinogen? Plutonium. So the young man did a documentary trying to figure out how the heck you got something. I got a family history on both sides, my mom and father. People dying of cancer. And I've been trying to avoid the genetic side of it by watching what I eat and watching whatever. And all my life I've been eating cold cuts, and y'all gonna now put it on. I'm 30 years later. Now y'all got it on the food diagram, food pyramid. It's all good in the food pyramid. Now I'm 35 and you talk about level 1 carcinogen? The young man does a documentary and exposes the Cancer Society, the Diabetes Society, exposes it. Exposes it. The same food companies selling you the poisonous, toxinous meat is the ones who are the biggest donors for the American Cancer Society, the American Diabetes Society. So they've been taking the bread from the corporations. That's their number 1 donors. So basically the documentary exposed, it's all a sham, yo. And so I'm about to do the same thing. And when we're going to use this. In 1820, this is a calendar. This is a calendar that my son got. It says Oakwood University. Academic calendar 2015-2016. So when I registered my son for school his freshman year at college, they handed out a calendar celebrating a 120-year history at this institution. Yeah, 120 years. Celebrating the fact that they have access to health information that the world is. You got young people out here doing documentaries, what the health. 1930, 1940. They had a health message. Not some European corporation called the General Conference of SDA. No, the Most High God revealed 3 visions to one of our ancestors, William Floyd, who went all over the country as a Nubian, free, North American. I'm going to say it again, Nubian, free. Not somebody who came here on slave ships. The Most High God could have gave a vision to anybody. He could have gave a vision to the Europeans who claimed to commandeer the message. But he didn't. Then, when they realized what was being revealed, what y'all got to understand is these Europeans, they always want to extract the wealth, but not put people in a position who reproduce because of their blessing in the covenant on a faster frequency than they do, put them in a position to be able to be fruitful and multiply. I'm trying to tell y'all that is all this has ever been about. Oh, we want to tap into the wealth of creating medical institutions and the wealth of being in the land of the free and the home of the brave, but we don't want those who have the birthright and the blessing to be fruitful and multiply to multiply, because we can't compete. It's called a monopoly. We want to monopolize the standing that Hellenism has created for Europeans. Even though we claim to be people of the gospel, people of the word, we want to capitalize. There's the word. Democracy is capitalism. We want to capitalize on the lies, the narrative that Hellenism created for us. And we don't want to compete with dominion. We can't compete with dominion. So even though we'll come into church and we'll claim to be children of God, we will not do that which the gospel says he sent it to do, which is set the captives free. How can you embrace gospel and not set everybody free? You're a liar and the truth ain't in you. How can you embrace everlasting gospel and not come to set the captives free? I came that you might have life. How do you embrace gospel? So, my people have a choice to make. Most importantly, my family. When the young man did his documentary, he went around and he got people to get on the right diet, the right lifestyle, the same one that these individuals have had for 120 years. They got people to get on it. And as he shot the documentary and exposed the fake health system, he had a group of people who practiced and exercised the true original blueprint for health. And that's all we're trying to do. Trying to get my people to do 90-day challenges with us. And as we tell this story, we document and we go and we show how they've show the defense. The defense is their attack. The defense is exposing the fact that they had the knowledge and they withheld the knowledge. The defense is showing that they've been living a lifestyle and then they build hospitals contrary to the lifestyle that they're living. That's theft. That's a lie. That's deceit. He that knoweth to do good and doth not do it. How do you know how to prevent cancer holistically and build a hospital based off of poison and medicine? Yet in your day-to-day life, you're not taking the medicine that you distributed in your hospital. In your day-to-day life, you live into 100 and 100 and plus. But you're growing an institution and you're growing facilities and making trillions of dollars, doing the total opposite of what has been revealed to you. That's theft. Let's get into it. First of all, Let's show you that.
French and Alsace, which gives them.
Let's show you that they claim. This first video is just going to show you that they claim the Tower of Babel. All right. European claiming the Tower of Babel. Not claiming it. They built the headquarters of the European Union, which is a fake confederacy, which has no authority. The reason the European Union has no authority is because Europe, which I will show you, the city that they named Europe after. Europe is a female that they made a myth around and turned into a goddess. Europa is the goddess that they call the continent Europe after. But that goddess is a fake lie about one of our queens of a real empire called Tyre. And all of y'all know the story of Helen of Troy. Y'all all know the story of the Trojan War. Y'all all know the story of Achilles. Y'all all know the story. None of it is true. Achilles ain't true. Troy didn't exist. Helen wasn't the most beautiful being. She didn't exist. The war didn't happen. I'm going to take you to the Word of God, to the real story that happened. Troy is not the kingdom. And they dang sure ain't Europeans. And I don't know how my dad, Pastor Frank E. Leggett III, Pastor Frank E. Leggett III, I don't know how in the world, 35 years of ministry, you and all your peoples, all of the PhDs that have come through the SDA, all of y'all going to Andrews, all of y'all going on, all up, I don't know how in the world y'all missed Ezekiel 28, the curse that God put on the king of Tyre. I don't know how in the world y'all missed the Hellenism and how they flip-flop Helen for Hagar. Europa is Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy is Hagar. Hagar, the same woman that that Abraham, because Sarah couldn't have a baby, Abraham had a baby with Hagar. Hagar was in captivity in Egypt because of the curse that God put on the kingdom of Tyre. Because the man at the time, the king, Sidon, king of Tyre, was wicked just like Sodom and Gomorrah. And just like Sodom and Gomorrah had a judgment day with God. Why? Because these Cush ancestors of ours knew better than walking away from their covenant and following in the ways of Nimrod. How could these individuals who weren't Hebrews be held accountable? Because these individuals who weren't Hebrews received a blessing with Noah and his 3 sons covering the 4 corners of the earth. Nubian Cushite kings. And so the most powerful of the Nubian Cushite kings Noah's son who received the firstborn, first fruits blessing. God dealt with his children first. Sodom and Gomorrah was judged and burned to the ground in the beginning of God calling Abraham. So God was just calling Abraham and them. And God didn't judge Israel until when the Messiah came and they rejected Christ, 70 AD. But he judged Sodom and Gomorrah thousands of years before that. What is that telling you? They were more powerful. Their blessing was greater. They were held accountable because they had the same covenant. That's how he could burn Sodom and Gomorrah to the ground. That's how he could say in Ezekiel 28 to the king of Tyre, I will destroy you. And then he allowed the same Greeks and the Romans that he allowed to punish Israel to topple Tyre. But before he allowed the city to be wiped off the map, he used the same king of Egypt that had a connection with the Most High God, another Cushite descendant who recognized his covenant with the Most High. When he took Sarah, the Most High God sent him a vision. The Most High God sent him boils and plagues on everybody in Egypt. So he comes back to Abraham like, what did you do, homie? I know the power of the Most High God. I know what's going on. This is the Creator. You told me it was your sister. You lied. So an Egyptian king who has enough spiritual discernment, enough relationship with the Most High God, to not only understand that this is God, but to do right by God. He treated Abraham like a king. He had already defeated Tyre. That's how Hagar, the daughter of Sidon, was his slave in Egypt. Abraham got a concubine, but you can only go into the king's service if you are royal. You become a servant at the level that you are captive of, just like Daniel and the three Hebrew boys. They went to Nebuchadnezzar, they went to Babylon as captives, but because they were royal, they served the king in royal capacity. Same thing as Hagar. When Egypt took down Tyre, they didn't destroy the whole city, because Egypt had the muscle, and Egypt was connected with the Most High God, and Tyre wasn't. So God has been chastising the people throughout his covenant outside of Israel. This is how he proves to us he has an everlasting covenant, and everybody who returns to this covenant will return to blessings and prosperity. But they let these Europeans lie to y'all and take this history about Tyre, Hagar, and then they create some myth. Achilles, the Trojans, Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world. And then they create Europe. So now here's Rome, present day, the papal, the Vatican, pumping not only the same defiance to God that God judged Sodom and Gomorrah with, that God judged Tyre with. Now Rome, the European Union, has built the same Tower of Babel in defiance to the Most High God in your present day.
which gives a slight German feel to the place. Well, Alsace has been fought over by the two of them for generations. There's a growing Islamic flavour as well. The perfect site for the European Parliament, then.
Prochaine station, Parlement européen.
But I want to know why the European Parliament building was deliberately constructed as a modernist version of the Tower of Babel in Peter Bruegel's famous painting.
Tower of Babel.
Created in 1563, Bruegel's masterpiece shows Nimrod directing operations with the ziggurat tower ascending behind him. It's shown in the construction phase, and according to the Bible, it was never completed. Why is that? Well, let's turn to Genesis chapter 11.
All right, so this is proof that everything that is being done globally is spiritual and not secular. Europe is declaring that it is waging war spiritually. The European Union is saying we are a spiritual entity and we are spiritually defying the Most High God. And the laws that we do and everything that we do as countries, as nations, economically, this is a spiritual war. Now you can play dumb if you want to. This is a declaration, just like Nimrod declared. He's about to read the declaration of Nimrod to God, and God responded in a certain way. So God is responding today to this declaration the same way he declares to, the same way he responded to Nimrod doing it. And anybody who unifies themselves with these business practices, with these fake entities, with these fake constitutions, with these fake nations, with these fake laws, these fake courts, these fake presidents, these fake denominations, anybody who unifies themselves with this is unifying themselves with the same spiritual defiance that Nimrod, that those who joined the Babylonian joint. Ain't no such thing. Europe wants you to think it's a secular, everything is no. This is their declaration. This is a spiritual battle, y'all. They built this. The dope is the number one crack in their armor. Y'all gotta understand this. The economy. Their banking system. Their banking system is built off of this same deception. All right. Gold is real money. The dollars that they print are called currency. It's fake money, and it used to be because it was too heavy to carry around the gold. But they claim that their economy is based off troy ounces of gold. I love it. A troy ounce of gold? Troy don't exist. Troy's a myth. Troy don't have no gold. God's children, who he gave dominion to, have the good gold of Havilah. And as long as Tyre and every other nation was in its covenant, they were prosperous with God's gold, with God's harvest, with everything. And the minute they went left, judgments rained down on Tyre, on Sodom and Gomorrah, on Israel, on Babylon, on Egypt. So, the only people who have money, the only people who control the economy is us. They have a mythical economy that is a charade that only works if you go along with the charade. Their monopoly, game play money, can only exist if you allow it. The moment you stand up like David, say, nah, homie, this is our economy, homie. No. And we're going to show you. Because we're going to go stand before God the way he told us to stand before him. And we're going to renew our vows with him the same way we go and renew our vows when we go and renew our vows with our brides. The same we enter into a marriage covenant. This is all God asks from his children. But before you come to the altar, you got to take a bath, homie. You got to get clean. And however many times you got to do it to get it right, but you better get it right before I judge you like I judge Tyre, like I judge Sodom and Gomorrah, like I judge Israel. Your day is coming. Your day is over. The last people on earth that have an opportunity to come back home is God's children who have been deceived and lied to. You are the only people who we are concerned with responding. Now, there are going to be others who are going to wake up out of their stupor and who are going to be blessed and come home, but I ain't concerned with them. If that happens for them, because all of the blood that they have shed, capitalizing on these lies and deceit, all of my brothers and sisters and children and family members who have been destroyed, I ain't concerned about nobody keeping a person of color, dark skin or fair skin. I ain't concerned about no person who is an accomplice to this deceit. All I'm concerned about is my people. Knowing who they are, proving who they are, and moving out of the way. Now, if some other people wake up and say, you know what? I identify with that family group. By all means, you could come home, homie. But you know what you're going to have to do? You know what you're going to have to do? Same thing that he told the prodigal son he had to do. You got to give up everything. Ain't no such thing as European. Ain't no such thing as U.S. Uncle Sam. Ain't no such thing as capitalism. Ain't no such thing as DC. Ain't no such thing as whatever your profession is in connection with this fake system that has been put in place. I want y'all to know we're relaunching, a same exact economy. The same exact economy. The same trade that Job engaged in. It's called the Havilah coin. Same coin, same currency attached to that same gold. Because you are the gold mine. He put the same gold in us. That's how you're a person of color. The darker your skin, the more concentrated the Havilah gold in you. The lighter you are, that's why he says a third or fourth degree burn. Do y'all know that in the law of God, in Leviticus? Let me just break it down for y'all. In the law of God, when it talks about burning judgment. Sodom and Gomorrah burned. He burned Sodom and Gomorrah. That's his ultimate judgment. He marked Cain with the mark of Cain. Ultimate judgment. He marked Moses' sister, Miriam, burnt. Ultimate judgment. And just so that they would know the stages and the degree and how they were supposed to deal with those who were judged by him who violated his law, he had degrees of the burns. This is where you get first degree burn, second degree burn, third degree burn, and fourth degree burn from. From God's judgment. And because Miriam's defiance was such disrespect, he said, if your daughter spit in your face, this is what he said to Moses. Moses came and pleaded on behalf of his sister to God. And God said to him, if your child spit in your face, would you not put her outside the camp? God said, she has spit in my face. She has totally fourth degree burn. Leprosy is the disease of chastisement. Leprosy was the mercy of him not taking their life. And then there were stages of leprosy, from clean leprosy. Some people were born with clean leprosy. Some children were born to remind the parents of their waywardness. He told them, yo, bring me the unblemished first fruits of your womb. So when the parents were idolatrous and wicked, and then they were thinking that they were just going to carry on in their wickedness, his children would have offspring, and God will remind them, just like he touched Miriam. But because the child had not done anything, it was clean leprosy. Do you know what clean leprosy is? It's a beauty mark. Just like you got a birthmark. It was his beauty mark of mercy to remind the parents, the fruit that you've given me in your life right now is unacceptable. Visiting the iniquities of the fathers upon the children, visiting the iniquities of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. He used the children to remind, he used the crops. The crops would fail. But since the child hadn't done anything, so instead of the baby dying, they would have a pigment issue called clean leprosy. In our day, we call it albinos. And when he marked Cain the first time, Cain, it says he marked Cain head to toe. So that when people saw him, they wouldn't kill him. Cain went from a dark Cushite Nubian, dark as this thing, to albino, clean leprosy. But then God allowed him to go and start a family and try and get back into the covenant. God gave him an opportunity to be born again. God gave him an opportunity for redemption, for salvation. God gave him an opportunity. He allowed him to marry and have seed, and he continued in his wickedness, continued in his idolatry. God marked him again. Fourth degree burn. Same burn Miriam got. Leprosy. Put him outside the camp. It says Cain became a restless wanderer, a vagabond. Outside the camp. You're outcast. And the word of God tells us the whole community is supposed to respond differently based off the degree of the burn. I lie to you not. He said if it's first degree, you ain't got to put them out the camp. Just make them go clean, wash, change their clothes, blah, 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 blah. And then the skin will heal itself. I lie to you not. He would allow the disease in degrees, the degree of leprosy, from clean leprosy down to burnt down to the white meat. That's where y'all get that term from. It was a burn down to the white meat. The white meat? So the pigment covers the white meat. I'm going to say that again. The pigment, the people of color, human, people of color, not blacks. You ain't no black. Nah, that's a European brand. God called his people, made in his image, Cush. Neon. Ethiopians came from Cush. Can an Ethiopian change its skin or its leopard change its spot? He didn't say a color when he said, can an Ethiopian? Everybody knew that was a Cush. The whole world knew that was a new being. It ain't no confusion about who the children are. Nubians, Cush, Neon, Clay. Ain't no confusion. It ain't even a question. And how every other shade, this is why God revealed a rainbow, because he knew when I mark Cain and other people who defy me, then when I allow individuals like Cain who've been marked to then go back in to the Nubians, to the Cush, to the clay, and have offspring, there is going to be a rainbow of shades. And he said the iron will not mix with the clay. The Nubian, the Cush, will always have dominion. This is where you get dominant and recessive genes. This is what science is talking about. Dominant gene, Nubian, Cush, clay, neon. And the Europeans know it. That's why they did Hellenism to you. The Europeans know it. That's why they branded you. And that's why they erased all of the Nubian history, the history of Cush, the history of Tyre. They tried to erase your economy. This is the most important thing you got to understand. They told you the economy is based off Troy ounces of gold. Listen to me. Troy ounces of gold. But then the Messiah came back and said, I gave you Havilah talents of gold. The Most High God is telling you, I got an economy for you. I invested in you. And I want y'all to understand, the fake Troy ounces of gold is not an economy. And we're going to prove it. I am building a network of businesses built off of your Havilah raw talent gold economy. And we're creating and printing currency, which God gave us the ability to do. And the method of exchange is our Havilah coins and our Havilah bills. So my little 7-year-old has been begging me to create a league for him to play in. Because my mom and my father did the same thing for me. The moment that we got to a place where they weren't playing on the Sabbath, I was on the team full-fledged. They invested in my career, my ability in football and basketball, full-fledged. And I'm doing the same thing for my 7-year-old. And I'm using my 21-year-old son as my co-regent, my number one business partner. I'm going to teach him how to be an archangel investor with his Havilah raw talent, gold. And I'm going to prove to my son and his whole generation And down to my youngest, all they're going to know is their economy. And the only thing we're going to exchange in this economy is our Havila coins. I want y'all to know, if the European Union can create a euro off of a fake myth, off of your history, and then the creator came and said, yo, I done gave you 1 talent, 2 talent, 5 talents, and I expect a return. That is a command for you to get down to business in the Father's business and give these generations back their ability to have a return waiting on the master when he comes to inspect what they have done with the investment. You think I'm going to let my shorties be out here wanting? When the king has said the ticket and admission into the kingdom is what you have done with the talents that he gave you? What financial return have you brought off of the investment? And then we going to let them? So I'm just showing y'all in the health arena. This is just one market. So understand, we dealing with recreation. The reason we deal with recreation is because the king commanded us to be kind to strangers because we entertain angels unaware. He commanded us, don't treat strangers any old type of way, because unknowingly you entertain angels unaware. So let me tell y'all something. Not only did he give us Havila talents, he defined for us day-to-day activities to prevent idleness. An idle mind is the devil's workshop, right? So the activities that he has caused us to engage in on a day-to-day to bring forth a first fruits blessing, this is the work of our hands. So he gave us, in our economy, the first thing he invested in, he said, be fruitful and multiply. So he gave us an economy, and then he gave us a series of harvests to test seasonally if we are being faithful with the works of our hands in his economy. And then outside of the seasonal test that we take, just like y'all in school, you got 4 semesters. At the end of every semester, they give you a final examination. Quarter 1 down, you got to take a final examination. The harvest and the whole community in the economy coming and saying, this is the first fruits I brought. This is he would inspect your fruits. That was your examination. And then outside of that, he said, I'm going to send angels to you. And you got to entertain them. Understand. Yo, it's in the word. It's in the word. Abraham received the angels when they were on their way to Sodom and Gomorrah. Did he not? Did he not? He intercepted the angels, and one of them was Michael, the creator, the Messiah, the Son of God. And he received them, and he immediately said, Sarah, go prepare a meal. Break bread. So the other thing outside of 4 annual harvests, which were the dopest celebrations of the year, then he said, be prepared with your faithfulness to entertain my guests. But then he put in the commandments. Then he put in the command. This is all the economy, y'all. This is all the economy that they stole from you with Hellenism. Then in the commandments, he says, you got to test the spirits, though. You got to test the spirit of the stranger. And you got to test the spirit of the stranger to know if they're from me or if they're a fallen angel. He didn't tell you what type of angel. And other places in the word, he said there are unfamiliar spirits. There are unfamiliar angels who will come into you. And they will present, he said, Lucifer will present himself as an angel. Satan will present himself as the angel of light. So already. So a part of our economy is being able to discern between the individuals that we deal with, what spirit they're carrying. And if it is a part of Satan's host or the heavenly host. Some people are just our people who are in bondage to unfamiliar spirits. Then we have heavenly host angels who come down to test our faithfulness. And then we have unfamiliar satanic heavenly hosts that Paul said grievous wolves have already come in amongst the flock. And he expects us at all times to be able to discern what spirit we're dealing with. And if it is the unfamiliar spirit, the stranger that is within thy gates, he said, when you apply the commandments, he said, by their fruits you shall know them. I'm a son of God. So if the Son of God sends one of his angels, they're going to be in line with the covenant of God. They going to keep the Sabbath. Or they going to be willing to be trained. If we dealing with human beings who are simply don't know, who simply have been their identity taken from them or are ignorant of the covenant, then they will be willing to be trained. Train up a child in the way that it should go. And he said, and even a stranger that are within thy gates, thy son, thy daughter, thy manservant, your hired hands, thy maidservant. He's talking about wealth. He's talking about those who have been blessed in his economy to have wealth, to have an estate, so much so that you have manservants and maidservants, not slaves, not a manservant. A maidservant is not a slave. The Most High God put himself on the level of a servant. And then the highest reward in the kingdom is, well done, my good and faithful servant. A manservant and a maidservant is not a slave. Sometimes some people who have been stripped of their identity need to come and get into the Father's household that has mastered his economy and be trained. And it is our number one God-given call and purpose to not only tap into his bread, but to have the bread abundant and flowing over. So much so that we attracting manservants and maidservants from all over the world, snatching them out of the Babylonian captivity and having them come and sit underneath the blessings of the windows of heaven, blessing, flowing. And they seeing the covenant, and they seeing the economy, and they seeing real Havila gold, not this fake European euro, this fake US dollar bill, not this fake. Yo, every entity that we put together, yo, our film studios, our people get paid in Havila coins and Havila towns. And you can take them and then you can exchange them on a Forex market. You can exchange them for gold, straight up. You can exchange them for silver, straight up. You can exchange them for Bitcoin, Ethereum. You can deposit them in your bank and leave it in your worthless bank and get no money on it. You could turn it into worthless dollars if you wanted and let it deteriorate through inflation. You could do that if you want to. Our job is to give you back your financial system. Our job is to evict the strangers. They've had an opportunity. They've had an opportunity. The European has had a 2,000-year opportunity to grab this covenant. And instead of grabbing this covenant, they rejected the covenant and they built a Tower of Babel. So it's time to respond. We are the harvesters of God's children. That's what we are. It's time for us to respond like harvesters do. The unblemished fruit, we harvest into the basket and bring it into the Most High God's storehouse within our gates. The flawed, blemished, fake fruits, he said, tie them up in a bundle, gather them together, and toss them in the flames. Oh, my mama's mama. It's called the Great Shaking. These Adventists were supposed to tell y'all about an investigative judgment. But once again, the European has played the person of color. The European. By their fruits, we know that they have no intentions of doing right by the gospel. So, it's fair-skinned individuals who identify with Europeans who have a choice to make. You have a choice to reject this track record of the fruit that the fake European so-called Christian, they left the track record. They can't change the track record. The investigative judgment is, yo, you're in court now. Yo, it ain't no changing the story. We got the witnesses of history that are testifying of your fruit. The only reason we out the closet now is because there ain't no going back for the European Christian. No matter what color you are. Ain't no going back. The only reason we here doing this is to let our people know that this fake sham that they've been putting on, they telling you who they worship. They telling you who they with. Once again, I'm just using the medical establishment on this example. I'm just using this one example. We're going to do documentaries to document their fruit in every last one of these streams that we're taking back and giving back to our people. And then we're going to have our people who have been deceived star. Take the lead role. The same ones who've been characterized as animals, whores, prostitutes, thugs. The same ones. Y'all got to understand though, the number one people who have identified you like that is the same Cushite, former Cushite, Philistine, idol worshiping, Dagon worshiping, sun god and Baal worshiping. You got to understand, it is more people who want to worship Satan as the sun gods of history than there are fair-skinned Europeans who are opposed. The threat, the reason this system is in place is not because of the fair-skinned European. They are not doing damage. It is the present day Egyptian. It is the present day Cushite Babylonian. It is the present day Cushite Ethiopian that has gone astray to idolatry. It is the present day Cushite king of Tyre, king of Persia, prince of Persia. These are the ones who have to get evicted first. The fair-skinned European that identifies with Rome and Greece have always followed these individuals. And when you evict the Philistine, when you evict the Egyptian, like Pharaoh, who says, who is God that I should be mindful of them? Okay, you can disrespect the Most High God all you want, but you're not going to do it in the US of A. You ain't going to do it in the lands where our ancestors come from neither. Because I could show you a curse that the Most High God put on Egypt. That's why the Europeans is down there. The only people that can restore our lands back to lands flowing with milk and honey, the only people that could bring back fertile lands to the Sahara Desert, you're looking at them. It's going to be desert as long as them fake Europeans is down there playing like Egyptians and Arabs and Turks. And as long as y'all keep letting them Germans go down there, but it's the prime ministers of the Pan-African Union, the prime minister of Nigeria, the prime minister of Ghana. It's all of these families steeped in the same pagan idolatry that's willing to chop up the bread with the Europeans and keep their people oppressed. And when you show the world how the USA topples the system, when you show our brothers and sisters all over the world, the Caribbean is watching. When you show our brothers and sisters how we take our covenant and we evict everything in defiance of it, just like the Europeans followed the pagan Egyptian pharaohs, the Most High God's children follow the example of the root. That's what David was, the root of Jesse, right? The Most High God told him that David was coming. The Most High God told you we was coming. Told you we was coming. Let me show you a couple more of these. So that's them celebrating that they created, they built the Tower of Babel. This is a spiritual war, y'all. Europe is waging spiritual war. Financially, health, everything. Don't play the games no more with nobody else. Don't play no game. Listen. And I'm going to show you that they're using Christianity because they can only use Christianity. Because God issued a deadly wound to Catholicism in 1798. So Catholicism has been using Protestant evangelical Christianity as the woman who rides the beast since 1798. Pops, how you missed that one, Pops? Frank E., how you missed that one? How? How y'all missed this one? It ain't no Europe. Once you understand Helen of Troy, once you understand, then you understand that none of that, nothing that they created is real. You know why? Because every last one of the systems that they created their thing on, all of our ancestors returned to the covenant. Nebuchadnezzar was in idolatry, but he returned to the Most High God when Daniel reintroduced him, reminded him of the covenant. Darius, the king of Persia, same thing. Cyrus, the king of Persia, same thing. Nineveh, when Jonah went And this is what they don't want you to know. That's why they erased the history. That's why they changed the names. Because when you can go back and look, you can see there are 3 times in Egyptian history where the Pharaoh put the Most High God above all idolatry in the land. First time Abraham came and lied. Second time Abraham came and lied. Isaac came, Abraham's son, went to Egypt and did the same lie. And the Pharaoh responded the same way, treated him like a king because of his covenant with the Most High God, the one true God. And out of their own mouth, the king of Israel, Nubian, Cushite. So when Caesar goes down into Egypt, and when Cleopatra is entertaining the idolatry of Caesar, to prevent individuals from identifying and returning properly, only the ignorant Pharaoh Ramses III, who tried to defy God, got his back broke. Every last one of the other Egyptian kings, because they acknowledged the Most High God, he allowed Egypt to continue to prosper. And he used Egypt to take down Tyre and judge Tyre. The moment Pharaoh Ramses III defied the Most High God and didn't respond how Babylon and all of them did, the moment that Pharaoh Ramses III held on to defiance the same way that Cain did, Egypt, God pronounced a curse in the word of God on Egypt and said it will never return to its same glory again. And look at it. You got fake Europeans down there faking like the Arabs, acting like Egypt doing something. And then you got African Americans in the entertainment industry here in America trying to sell us that Egypt is great. They want to sell you the Ankh. They want to sell you the third eye pyramid. They want to sell you Egypt, sell you Egypt, sell you Egypt, because they are the same exact idolatrous horde that gets crushed by our people all throughout history.
Whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth.
Let us make a name, unless we be scattered abroad amongst the face of the earth. And he let this come out his mouth. Nimrod said to the people, Come, let us build a tower to the heavens, let's build a name for ourselves. That's Babylon. That's fame. That's American Idol. Come, let's build a name for ourselves, unless we be scattered to the four corners of the end. So his defiance was saying, man, God just hit us with a flood. God hit our ancestors with a flood and judged the ancestors when they was living the life that they living. So before we totally dip down into our pagan, idolatrous, defiant lifestyle, let's build a structure that can withstand another flood. So that if he tries to judge our lifestyle again, we're not going to obey. No. Instead of just obeying, no, we're going to be pagan idolaters, but we're going to build a structure of defiance so that if he hit us again, we can weather the storm. And he said, we're going to build this to have a name and so that we will not be scattered. And God said, for real? That's what y'all doing? Oh, you don't want to be scattered? Oh, you know the stories of Cain being a restless wanderer, a vagabond. Restless wanderer. Restless, no Sabbath rest. Restless, no harvest. You got to stop and sow seed, and you got to wait. And so what God is saying, yo, you can't be fruitful if you're a restless wanderer. You don't even have time to bring forth fruit from the ground. So what he is saying is, not only are we going to build a structure, we're going to build some cities. We ain't wandering no more. We're going to build a structure. These walls going to be thick. We ain't wandering no more. We're going to be able to bring forth fruit. He say we not going to be able to bring forth fruit. We're going to bring forth fruit. God said, for real? All right. Go scatter. I'm going to give you dead languages. Pig Latin. English. Spanish. French. German. Greek. Hebrew. Aramaic. All of the biblical languages that y'all want to elevate as if that's the Holy Ghost. As if that's the word. That ain't the word of God. The Greeks. Once again, Pops. How y'all miss this, Pops? Y'all down there at Oakwood University at Andrews acting like Greek is the word of God. Greek ain't the word of God. Greek is dead language. Every word that proceedeth out of the mouth of God is not Aramaic or Hebrew. He just communicated through dead languages to people who have dead languages. Y'all run around here like the Germans and the Greeks are scholars. Aristotle and Plato ain't no scholar. The Germans ain't wise. That's propaganda. The Germans ain't more mechanical. That is propaganda so you will buy into their white supremacy. They are the most ignorant. Because they are the most idolatrous. They have shed the most blood.
Taking the bull by the horns,
They claiming they the woman that rides the beast.
Brussels.
This is the same European Union. This is the same headquarters. So not only are they going to build the structure saying, yo, this is a spiritual war. We got the same defiance. This is what the European Union represents. This is what the United Nations represents. This is what the United States represents. The United States is London, D.C., and the Vatican. It is not the USA. You have these three unions, these artificial unions that they created to promote Hellenism. Three unions or three marriages. And this video is telling you the marriage that our unions represent is the woman riding the beast. This is them saying it. And here you got a European out here trying to figure out like, yo, I'm a European. Why would the European Union clown? Nobody on earth should claim to be European because it's fake. It's no such thing. Europa doesn't exist. Europa is a Nubian queen of Tyre, princess of Tyre, whose kingdom got just so y'all know, I don't be making stuff up. Just so y'all know forever. Helen of Troy is a fake myth. off of a Nubian queen, just like the Queen of Sheba. And that Queen of Sheba, real name is Hagar. Same Hagar that the Most High God saw in the desert when she had a son for Abraham named Ishmael. And when Sarah got jealous because she was fruitful, of course she was fruitful. She's a daughter of Eve. She's a Cushite queen. Of course her womb brings forth fruit. And because Sarah felt threatened now, Sarah ran her out the house. And so for all of my Cushite mamas and sisters and queens who let these Europeans lie to y'all and tell y'all that the model and image of beauty is an anorexic, bulimic, stick figure, zero, about to be blown away by the wind model. And I know this to be a stigma and to be true because my grandmother, Aura Lillian Leggett, all my life, my grandmother has been affected by light skin and dark skin. When I brought my wife home, oh, she got the she got that print. Come on, grandma. What you talking about? Eve was probably 4 shades darker than you. The most beautiful woman ever. I know our women have been lied to, abused, battered. Because my grandmother to this day believes beauty and light skin is synonymous. Believes straight hair and beauty is synonymous. And that is because they lied to y'all and told y'all Helen of Troy was the most beautiful. This is what the myth says. The war was because Helen was so beautiful. Well, that's how beautiful Hagar was. And Hagar was midnight onyx dark. How about that? How about that? So at the end of the year, every year we doing a modeling Hollywood Fashion Week. A supernatural model. Not a Kardashian. A Kardashian couldn't show up to Hollywood Fashion Week. They can't pay to get into Fashion Week. It's supernatural. No silicone. No implants. It's supernatural. Hollywood Fashion Week is supernatural supermodels. This is rehab. This is therapy. This is reparations. This is restoration. You will rebuild the old waste places. The wasted beauty that they squander with these lies. Nip and tuck. They got a nip and tuck. Listen, they proudly tell y'all. These radio stations down here, especially in this fake rap community, the number one ideal image is a bunch of surgeons that do plastic surgery in Central Florida. And all of these programmed, all of our programmed, trauma-based mind control, programmed daughters and sisters and wives, of course the European is gone. They gone. They gone. But they know They stole your identity. They know that. That's why they go out and try and get tans all day, every day. They already know. But that's trauma-based mind control. But now they got our sisters and our daughters thinking that this nip-tuck society is beauty. And that's thanks to Spike Lee. Y'all got Spike Lee to thank for that. Once again, I keep telling y'all, these niggas. Spike Lee did that. School Days. Spike Lee did that. Good and bad hair. Good and bad hair. See if I care. Good and bad hair. The jigaboos and the wannabes. Spike Lee did that to y'all. Spike Lee did that to my grandmama. And all of the other Hollywood, blackface, minstrel age producers before him. So all we doing is we are erasing and restoring the process. So let me show y'all. Ezekiel 26, 12 through 14. What is God's prediction concerning ancient Tyre? Once again, the Europeans claim Troy. There's no such thing as Troy. They just bit Tyre. And this is what God said through Ezekiel about Tyre. So if there's no Troy, there's no Trojan War. There's no Trojan horse. There's no Achilles. There's no Helen. Most importantly, there's no Hellenism. So there is no European history. There's no Europe. Cain was cursed as a vagabond. He don't have no kingdom. His descendants don't have no kingdom. There's no British crown. Vatican has no authority. There's no French crown. There never was a French crown. There never was a Russian crown oligarchy. Paul and them took an everlasting gospel to those descendants of Cain so that they could have an opportunity to get back into the ark of the covenant of Cush. It's one root. There's no Alex Haley's roots. It's one root. The whole reason the Messiah came and died, and he told the Hebrews, listen, judge not that ye be not judged. Yo, we going to Cain's children. You're going to take an opportunity for them to come home. We're not leaving them out in the cold. They're mine. Yes, they are. They're not going to create a new narrative. They're not going to create a new theory. They're not going to create a new history. They're not creating a new name for themselves. They're not going to create any new kingdoms. They don't have no kingdom. I got the kingdom, and they get to come to the kingdom. Either they get in my kingdom, or they can stay out there in the cold where they at. And they can get what Lucifer gonna get. And they could get what Cain gonna get. And they could get what Caesar gonna get. And every last one of them got to make an individual personal choice. They don't got no supremacy. They don't got no power. There ain't no such thing as no evolution. There ain't no such thing as Lucy. There ain't no such thing as Homo sapiens. Yes, they created Homer-sexuals. Homer is the guy that wrote the myth about the Trojan War. Homer is a guy who wrote the lie about you evolving. So they get Homo sapiens from Homer. They get homosexuals from the type of sex that Homer was engaging in the worship to these gods that the people of color were engaging in. And then Homer changed the Egyptian gods to Roman gods. Jupiter, Hermes. He changed Cush nations to Greek nations. He changed Cush's Egyptian history to European Egyptian history. He changed Nineveh and Assyria's lands to Arab Saudi Arabia. These fake Greek and Romans changed King Darius, King Cyrus, Isaiah 45, real, Cushite, descendant of Keturah, second wife of Abraham. Who had a son, Midian, who the Midianites came from, who also had a son, Sheba. These Cushite kingdoms produced King Cyrus, Isaiah 45. Who took down Babylon, the greatest physical kingdom the world has ever seen. Took down Babylon. And then they told you a story that the Persians are European. What? And now these Europeans in your present day, after the Messiah coming, rebuking the Jews for having bigotry towards the fair skin. This was the bigotry. The Hebrews had bigotry against the dark-skinned Nubians called the Samaritans. Jesus' mother was a Samaritan, was from Galilee, was a Nazarite. The Hebrews had bigotry against dark skin and fair skin. This is why the king said, judge not that ye be not judged. You're going to take this gospel out there. I'm going to find me some of y'all. Because if I came and I called your ancestor Abraham out of the same darkness that I'm calling Cain's ancestors out of, you wouldn't have no access to eternal life neither. How dare you act like you self-righteous when your ancestor was lost in the same idolatry they in, and now you don't want to go to these pagans, sun worshipers? The judge not that ye be not judged was not for the whole world. It was for idolatrous, pagan Hebrews who had been given redemption. Abraham, walk before me and be blameless. I gave you redemption, and now you a bigot and don't want to take redemption to these fair-skinned people? Oh, you going to... And now these fair-skinned people, after all of that sacrifice and after all of that blood, and after all of the oppression that he took and his people took in bringing them the gospel, they're going to turn around and they're going to reject and do the same bigotry towards his original root children, and not want them to return to their covenant, not want them to have redemption. This is what evangelical Christianity is about, especially in Seventh-day Adventist circles. And I really did not know this until, I would say, 2014. Because my mom and my pops, when they left Oakwood, we hit the streets, and when we go into a city, we go into the highways and the byways. That's all I know. My pops, my moms, they took everlasting gospel to the world the same way the Creator took everlasting gospel to the world. And that's what I thought Seventh-day Adventists did. Individuals got the benefit of the doubt because my pops and my moms and the churches that we was a part of and the families that we was a part of was doing the same thing that I seen in the Word. So I gave the body a benefit of the doubt. And then when I do the same exact blueprint to my children that my parents did to me, and then when I go to send my children off to receive the same thing that I received, to be able to duplicate what my parents did, I'm hearing fair-skinned people and people of color talking totally different gospel. I'm seeing individuals that my family has invested in for generations playing around, following, trying to be like. Oh, we're trying to get, we're going to increase our education. This is what their educational system is based on, though.
Looking for a mythical woman who has become an
This is
emblem
their
of the
educational
European
system.
Union. And here she is. She's called Europa. She's hanging onto a bull. And the building behind her houses both the European Council and the Council of the European Union.
This is their education. You're trying to increase education? This is knowledge to them. The woman riding the beast is knowledge. Every last school of higher learning, this is the European Union. This is the United Nations. The United Nations makes the curriculums for schools around the globe. Public and private. The United Nations writes the world curriculum of schools. And this is education. And if any entity that my babies is going to is following anything that they doing, you can't detour from nothing that the Most High gave us. I don't care if you chasing an essay. To heck with an SAT score. The Most High God ain't getting no SAT score. Who the heck created an SAT score anyway? Who the heck cares about the board who's sitting over saying this child is this and this child? Who the heck are they? Where they at? Far as I know, every time a wise man from my covenant stand up against any wannabe wise guy in the world, they all fall down. There ain't no wisdom in the world. How y'all can't see this? They don't have no wisdom. Ain't no wisdom. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. And entering into the marriage covenant with God is the end of wisdom. The reverence and the respect for the Most High God is the beginning of wisdom. And the two becoming one is the completion of wisdom, knowledge. And Adam knew Eve. What? They don't even accept the marriage covenant as knowledge. That's because they are this. He told you, grievous wolves have already come in amongst the flock. They are this. Roman Catholicism received a deadly wound and transferred its attack to evangelical Protestant Christianity in 1798. Evangelical Protestant Christianity has been Mystery Babylon, the great mother of harlots, since Rome received a deadly wound, says Daniel chapter 9. Frank E. Leggett III. How y'all miss it? How y'all miss it? It's right here, yo. It's right here. It's right here. Ezekiel 26, 12 through 14. What is God's prediction concerning ancient Tyre? And they shall make a spoil of thy riches, and make a prey of thy merchandise. So God is telling Tyre, the woman riding the beast in their mythical lie about Europa, is when this king's daughter went into captivity in Egypt. God allowed Tyre to topple to Egypt first as a warning. But this verse right here is the final time where God says Tyre will never recover. It will never ever be a city. It will never ever be a nation ever again. And they try and tell you that the Trojan War is this event. They try and tell you that some Greek nation fought against a city called Troy. And they deceived the people of Troy by their soldiers went into a Trojan horse and hid in the Trojan horse, and they brought the Trojan horse into Troy. And then when they went into sleep, the soldiers came out of the horse. And this is where you get the thing, never look a good gift horse in the mouth. This is where you get that story from. They straight up bid it. Tyre was a part of one of the most powerful Phoenician empires and dynasties of the world. Phoenicia was the blessing of the expansion of territory through the succession of building the ark and sailing the ark and being fruitful and multiplying and replenishing the world. And when Noah's sons received that blessing, their descendants who carried that blessing forward to this very day, it's an everlasting blessing. But when you look in the Word of God, when David built the temple, built Jerusalem, first, no, he didn't build Jerusalem. I'm sorry. Take that back. Jerusalem was already built. When Joshua went into the promised land, Jerusalem was built once again by these Cushite giants. We know they were giants. Joshua and them came back with grapes the size of men. And 10 of the 12 said, we are grasshoppers to them. So these are giants. These are the giants of the world. And the Hebrews were not. We talk about dominant and recessive genes. We talk about first fruit blessing and individuals who came from the line of Cain, who had to be called back and grafted into. So now Phoenicia, Carthage, Tyre, these are all the kingdoms from the sons of Japheth, who is Noah's firstborn son, who God said, I will expand your territory. Genesis chapter 9. Y'all got it? Not European. Cushite. strong, giants, just like Ham, just like Cush. Got it? All throughout history. David wants to build his castle for his wife. He reaches out to Tyre, to the Phoenicians. And at that time, they weren't anti-God. At that time, they were in line. This is why God responds the way he does in Ezekiel chapter 26 and Ezekiel chapter 28 when they turn to idolatry. The same way with Sodom and Gomorrah. The same way with Egypt. The same way with Babylon. Our kingdoms were not always idolatrous the way that they want you to believe. They want you to think that the whole world is idolatrous and the only people who have ever been connected to God is Abraham and the children of Israel. You a liar and the truth ain't in you. Yes, our ancestors, just like the Hebrews, went back and forth with God. And just like in the Hebrews, God raised up Hezekiah, Joash, Samuel, Ezekiel. It were always people who returned back to the covenant. Same thing with Noah's other sons. This is the part of the word of God that they do not tell you. And this is the part of the word of God that our people of color need, because this is your history. The same history that they tell you don't got no history. Only history you got is enslaved, coming here. You a liar, yo. What is Carthage and Hannibal? Hannibal is a part of the Phoenician dynasty with the firstborn blessing of the Most High God from Noah. What? So now, Ezekiel 26 is Tyre. For the last time, God like, okay, you've been going back and forth, going back and forth. Now, this is what I think about you. And this is their 70 AD moment, just like with Jerusalem. So how God stood out on the Mount of Olives and looked over Jerusalem and said, when you see the army surrounding Jerusalem, know that destruction is nigh. Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles is. So God does a prophecy for Jerusalem in 70 AD. But prior to that, on Jerusalem, he does the same thing for Tyre. And he tells them how their city's going to fall. He tells them in this text right here. And then the Greeks, who were the ones who actually were allowed to punish Tyre, just like the Greeks and the Romans were the ones who were able to punish the Hebrews. God told them, God told Cush, the worst of the worst heathens, because y'all keep playing with my covenant, I'm going to allow the worst of the worst. And when the worst of the worst got they shot, they said, we never looking back again. And they will make spoil of thy riches and make a prey of your merchandise. So Tyre is the commercial hub. And this is what I want y'all to know. Your economy that we're putting back in place is the leading economy of the globe if you just put the principles and the fundamentals and the bedrock of it back in place. And the world can't do nothing about it. Can't nobody do nothing. When we hand this off to these babies and they run with it, and our brothers and sisters, and they run with it, it don't matter what the world want to do. It don't matter what the principality want to do. Okay. They shall break down your walls and destroy your pleasant houses. They shall lay your stones and your timber and your dust in the midst of the water. And I will cause the noise of your songs to cease, and the sound of your harps shall be no more heard. And I will make you like the top of a rock. You shall be a place to spread nets upon, and thou shalt be built no more. For I, the Lord, have spoken it, saith the Lord God. Ezekiel 26:12-14. So Tyre was built out like an island. So whenever people were trying, because they were a naval force, so they had their ships and they sailed up and they built their city out in the water so nobody could attack them, because nobody could defeat their navy and there was no land route to get to Tyre. So this prophecy, before it even happened, God told Tyre, you got confidence because y'all out there, y'all in the water. You feel like Nebuchadnezzar, you feel like Nimrod, that you're gonna defy me. You're gonna build a structure that's gonna allow you to be idolatrous and you can't be touched. This how I'm gonna touch you. And he told him, they shall break down your walls and destroy your pleasant houses, and then they shall lay the stones and your timber and your dust in the midst of the water. So they had a little colony on the mainland, but the main city was in the water. So what God is telling them is, when they come to attack you, this is hundreds of years before this happened. Ezekiel said this about Tyre long before it even happened. All right. So when the attack happens, the people come, they sack the towns on the land, and they knock down all of the houses. And they take the houses and they throw the wood and the timber and everything. And they make a land bridge out of the house and the timber and the dust. And they just build the land bridge and they march right out to Tyre while they celebrating and partying. This is why he said, and your songs is going to stop. Yo, watch this. Tyre was a city of merchants who traded with all countries around the Mediterranean Sea and even beyond. This is telling you that these ancestors, these Nubian ancestors of Cush, controlled the global economy. Rome didn't, Greece didn't. Rome got its goods, its spices, its silk from India and all of it, and the Americas. And the Americas. Once again, I'm going to say, and the Americas. And China. And the West Indies. South America, Central America, North America. These individuals controlled the global trade, continent to continent, not missing any. In the Mediterranean, in the continent that they call Africa, when they wanted the goods of Central America and South America, they simply went to Phoenicia. They simply went to Tyre. They went to Carthage. They went to one of the ports. The port cities that Phoenicia, Tyre, Carthage controlled. And they bought spices there. There was a whole network of caravans going back and forth, crisscrossing the mainland, coming back and forth to the ports that these individuals controlled. This is how Joseph, okay, let's talk about the economy. This is how Joseph was sold into slavery into Egypt, because the merchants traveled from the main cities. Remember, Nimrod whole defiance was, you ain't gonna scatter us no more. Nimrod's whole defiance of him building his kingdoms, Babylon and all of the kingdoms that y'all know of, was them saying, yo, we ain't about to be wandering around. We gonna stay put right here And then we're going to rely on a network of main travel routes and merchants going back and forth from port cities from the coast to bring goods from those who specialize in the merchant trade and those of us who dominate the lands. Babylon and them didn't have no ships. They wasn't interested in ships because their whole thing beef with God was, yo, we not going to be wandering no more. We not into ships. We going to let Phoenicia and them do the ship thing. We going to let them sail all of China. Then we just going to go to their port city and buy it. Just like you go to New York. You want a good fashion? Your city don't create the top fashion. Y'all go to New York, cop what you want, come back. Tyre was a city of merchants who traded with all countries around the Mediterranean Sea and even beyond. Because of their wealth, they were many times involved in undesired wars. Nebuchadnezzar besieged the mainland Tyre and destroyed it. He carried on a 13-year siege of the island, which he never conquered. This is King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. 13-year siege and couldn't take down the city, the island. This is his, like, they can't tell this lie and get away with it, yo. I don't know how these pastors letting them lie about Europe. Europe does not exist. It's a fake myth. However, a compromise was entered into which permitted Tyre to retain its kingship on a semi-independent status. Babylon maintained in the city a commissioner whose duty it was to make sure that the proper tribute was paid regularly to Babylon. Tyre on the mainland was not rebuilt at that time, but the island city continued past the Persian period. When Alexander threatened Tyre, this island city refused to submit to Grecian control. So Alexander, using timbers and debris from the old city of Tyre, built a causeway out to the island and fulfilled the prophecy of Ezekiel 26:12. His army marched over the causeway to the island and captured and destroyed the city. He killed the leaders and sold the remaining inhabitants into slavery. The city was almost completely destroyed. The city was rebuilt, but never was quite as it had been before the fall. Later in AD 1291. So, what's the word of God telling you? Alexander the Great, God allowed Alexander to fulfill the prophecy and judge his people who knew better, who knew his covenant and went away from it. And when they tried to revive Tyre, they were not able to bring back its greatness. Why? They didn't have the ability to sail. They didn't have the knowledge to build the ships. They didn't know how to navigate. These are the Greeks. These are the Greeks. So instead of telling you the story straight up like it happened, they then decide to tell you a myth about the Greeks. Why? Because the true story of Tyre lets you know that the Nubians, when they are in a covenant with God, have the blessing that dates back to Noah in the covenant. So in order not to tell you that story, in order not to say, yo, Alexander the Great went and fought against Tyre, and then you could look in the word and see Ezekiel chapter 23 talks about Tyre. Oh, who is Tyre? Oh, let me go look. Oh, that's the Phoenician. Oh, the Phoenician dynasty dates back to David. Yo, they great. Yo, the Greeks wasn't sailing around the world. The first people in Europe that they claim started sailing was the Vikings. And the Vikings didn't start sailing until these Africans, called the Moors, in 700 AD, went up into Europe. So once again, this Christopher Columbus, this greatness, this your people brought here on slave, this, listen, man. It's all a distorted lie so that nobody identifies with the principle that it is better to obey than to sacrifice. Meaning, if you just obey the covenant, you're going to dominate. And when you go away from the covenant, I'm going to find the most lawless, soulless nation on earth to chastise my people. Until you remember your covenant with me. And then I'm going to personally come and die and pay the ultimate price to offer the same covenant to the most lawless people on earth. The same thing I did to Abraham. And when they reject that, I'm finished with mercy. I'm finished with grace. It's judgment time. It's time for my children to come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sin. It's time for my people who are in Laodicea to wake up and be back in Philadelphia. Return back to the covenant of Philadelphia with me. All of the descendants who identify with Europe, the instructions that he gave Laodicea in order to get into the kingdom is for those people who he took the gospel to, who were in utter darkness, that he used to chastise his children, because that's all they knew throughout world's history. So he's saying, you think you rich, you have need of nothing. You poor, blind, and naked. I sent you my covenant, you rejected it. You put on this fake myth of spirituality. It ain't working. So, to them, he said, so if you do this, if you do this, if you do this, I will give you a crown of life. But to his children from the everlasting covenant, his children of the everlasting gospel, who date back to the Garden of Eden being created in his image, the last Adam and the last Eve is what I call us. We are the ones who he's calling to be Philadelphia in these last days, because Philadelphia does the work of sealing his children. Laodicea just figures out how to scrape into the kingdom. Philadelphia is used to finish the work. Philadelphia is used as the example that leads many to righteousness and reminds many of their everlasting covenant. Laodicea can't do that. Laodicea can't remind nobody of nothing. All they could do is be obedient and repent and turn. It's Philadelphia who has to do the work. It's Philadelphia who has to transform and transfigure. Once again, I say to Pops and all of y'all, how is you missing it? How is you still talking about Laodicea? Forget Laodicea. When Philadelphia get right, Laodicea gonna fall in line. Forget Laodicea. When you do Goliath like you supposed to do Goliath, the world will follow David. The world will sing David's praises. The world will have a period of prosperity the same way that God gave David the man after his own heart. Peace on every side. Abundant life on every side. Where before him it was war, strife, because of the idolatry of Saul and the people. But because David had God's heart, Philadelphia. Because David had God's spirit. And then he led the people into choosing between Saul or God's spirit. Even his own children. Most of them made the wrong decision. Ain't make it. He had a whole set of priests, though. He created the new Levitical priesthood. Wiped out the old Aaron Levites. He established a whole new Levitical priesthood on worship and praise. Aaron's Levitical priesthood didn't have that. And out of the new Levites, he got new sons and daughters. That his own sons and daughters from his womb, because of disobedience, was rejected by the Most High. This is what we're trying to lead our people into.
Know that she has not taken the bull by the horns. She's clinging on for dear life. In a Greek myth, the god Zeus took a fancy to Europa, a Phoenician princess. He transformed himself into a white bull and made sweet loving noises. Naturally, Europa climbed onto his back, and he made off with her, swimming across the ocean to Crete, where he raped her. The continent of Europe was named after her sometime.
So they got a story about Zeus coming down, transforming into a bull. Europa jumps on his back. He goes across the ocean to Crete. This is how they identified the lands of Europe. And he raped her. And this is how he started his European. This is their story of how Europe was born. This is the European Union. This is the nations that you interact with, that they tell you are your allies, that they tell you got free trade agreements with. And they're telling you everything we're doing, we're identifying ourselves as Mystery Babylon, the woman that rides the beast. It's another name for Europa. They're telling you. We identify with that spiritual identity. That's who we are, the European Union. They signed the Treaty of the European Union in the Vatican. 1951. In the Vatican. So who's the high priest of the woman riding the beast? So who's calling the shots in this spiritual attack? Financial crisis, all of that, all of this stuff is artificial man-made disasters trying to break the children of the promised land who still got the covenant with the Most High God. In Africa, they don't got internet. They got internet in really one country. So when God says knowledge will increase, the only place where we have the abundant life, the freedom that he said he was going to give his bride in Revelation 12, I will allow my bride to fly into a place prepared for her by God, out of the reach of the dragon for 1260 years. The only place on earth where this exists, where that safe haven, where knowledge has increased, men should flow to and fro, where we could create economies and businesses, where we can create our own estates and set captives free. This is the only place in the world. Everywhere else has the stranglehold of this entity, the European Union. They control South America, Central America. It is a Roman Catholic. South America, Central America, Brazil, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Spain was the capital when the Roman Catholics split the world in colonialism and slavery. Portugal to the east, Spain to the west. The European Union is just an extension of that treaty. They keep making these treaties all throughout the years to compound the attack. And the attack is a financial one. And right now I'm about to show you it's a medical one.
Allopathic doctors refer to them. We've known for the last 50 years that the American medical system is broke. People are sick and are getting sicker. What many of us don't realize is that this system of healthcare that we have was created almost solely by one man, John D. Rockefeller.
Did y'all hear that? Hold up. Once again, I told you. They come to the United States of America and masquerade as evangelical Christians. The Rockefellers masqueraded as Baptist Christians. Did you hear what I said? The Rockefellers came here as the agents of this European Union, of this woman riding the beast, and came here as Baptist Christians. Evangelical Baptist Christians is who the Rockefellers are. The Roman Catholic Church has been using the Protestant evangelical Christianity denominations. Remember, there are corporations. They are corporate entities filed with the state. Listen, separate yourself from your grandmother, whoever taught you about Jesus. This is not about that. This is about the grievous wolves that Paul was trying to warn God's children. Because you can't go on the offensive and finish the work. You can't take a gospel. He said, and this gospel shall go into all the world, and then the end shall come. So if somebody else is controlling the narrative, this is the game, y'all. They knew that God declared that his gospel would go untarnished into all the world, and then the end will come. So they created a defensive strategy called opposition control, where you control your opposition from the top down. So it doesn't matter if a parishioner in the pew believes in the gospel. If the corporate heads are purposely diluting the gospel, corrupting the gospel, changing, distorting, making a mockery of, on purpose, then what effectiveness will it have to go into all the world? Yeah, people will. Yeah, you may go to church 40 years, 50 years. Yeah, you might be good. But the end will never come if God's people ain't on the offense like his people were. And if God's people aren't making people whole, aren't meeting the needs, aren't snatching his people out of Babylon and rescuing them.
We've known for the last 50 years that the American medical system is broke. People are sick, and they're getting sicker. What many of us don't realize is that this system of healthcare that we have was created almost solely by one man, John D. Rockefeller. And a lot of people don't realize that the way we feel in the health of America is the result of this one man's decision. We've gone so far away from being healthy that many of us have forgotten what it's like and what normal healthcare system is about. I feel like it's important that we pull back the veil on how this system got started so that you too can know the truth. 100 years ago, America was buzzing with healers, like homeopathic physicians, naturopaths, herbologists, body workers like chiropractic and osteopathic physicians. Patients had a choice. They had a choice to use allopathic doctors or natural healers, and the two professions had ongoing debates. Allopathic doctors referred to themselves as heroic and believed it was their job to aggressively drive disease from the body.
Now, mind you, once again, y'all got to remember the propaganda. They want you to believe that the European is the height of knowledge and science. And when you go study European history, you know that the blackamoors from Timbuktu, from West Africa, these are the disciples of so-called Muhammad. Muhammad came in 630 AD, and by 700 AD, 70 years later, the blackamoors, the Muslims, this is the Nubian Cushites from West Africa, from North Africa, from Senegal, East Africa. These are the same Philistines, Senegal, East Africa. These are the same Philistines who worship the Dogon. These are the same Philistine Egyptians, like Pharaoh, who said, "Who is God that I should be mindful of him?" And the most powerful general of the blackamoors, who went into Europe first and conquered Spain, was from West Senegal, descended of those same Philistines, worshiping the same pagan Dogon tribe, same pagan Dagon god, and they converted to Islam and evaded Europe, meaning the same Caesar, the same arrangement that Caesar had with Egypt when he married Cleopatra, was for the Egyptians to teach the Romans the pagan sun god worship. Constantine did the same thing with Persia in 300 AD. So the Greeks and Romans were upgrading their paganism with the Egyptian and Babylon mystery religions. Then they had these same Egyptians and Babylons come up into Europe and build their mystery religion schools called universities. Teach them their science. The same science that they was teaching in the pyramids in Egypt, they came to Europe from 700 AD to 1500 AD. 800 years. Built every university, every school, every road. Go look at Blackamoor history. Just go look at the Blackamoors, put it in, and it's going to come up. So now they want you to believe that when these Europeans came to North America, these Europeans are the leaders in the world in science, in health. So if that was true, why did the so-called Native American have to save their lives and teach them how to plant corn? When they got here in the 1600s, if they were so advanced, come on, y'all, come on. If they were so advanced, they tell you in their own history books that first winter, they lost everybody. They just had to keep coming and coming, and then the Native Americans had to show them once again, they will not give credit to our ancestors who was already here before those so-called Native Americans. But by now in the 1830s, this is the first time where they try and erase. Remember, Hellenism is about erasing. So now this is the first time where they come to erase what our ancestors practiced, which is husbandry. Husbandry is holistic planting, eating that which grows, using everything that grows as medicine. It's called husbandry. And this is the first period in history where alchemists who worship the gods of Egypt, this is the science that was taught to them by the Blackamoors, alchemy, chemistry, and the pharmaceutical companies come out of chemists using and practicing alchemy. Alchemy is a black magical art dedicated to the sun god Horus in Egypt. The Egyptians taught the Europeans alchemy. The Europeans came to the US, and in place of husbandry, and this is telling you in the 1800s, our people are still operating. Our people system that was in place before the Europeans came, before they started giving credit to Native Americans. What they're telling you is it wasn't until the 1830s that they were able to put a system of alchemy in place. The medical system that you have is a chemical dependent black magical art of alchemy. Pharmakeia comes out of alchemy. They're telling you. They are so far behind us that it wasn't until the 1830s, 1840s that they were able to even put another narrative and another system in place.
They based their practices on what they considered scientific. But most people had a natural mistrust of this scientific medicine because their techniques involved things like bloodletting, tobacco enemas, and barbiturates for sleep.
So John D. Rockefeller is trying to put in the medical system that you have today. He's trying to introduce chemical medicines, and the people don't know nothing about this poison system. And who was around at the same time? 30 years later, 20 years later, after 1840, the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists is going to form itself. But in the 1830s and the 1840s, already, right now, there's a man named William Foy preaching the message that warned a Millerite movement that a disappointment was coming. 1844, the precursor movement to the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, all thought they had locked down the principles of their denomination, and they thought, based off prophecy, that God was coming back because of a 2300-day prophecy and investigative judgment. He was coming back in 1844. So they sold all of their property, they sold all their land. They like, if we go into the kingdom. And William Foy told them, Ellen White documents. It's a lady by the name of Ellen White. If y'all don't know who the Seventh-day Adventists are, it's a lady by the name of Ellen White who documented William Foy's 3 visions and documented that he was saying, I was showed the second coming 3 times, 3 separate visions of the second coming of the Messiah. And it ain't happening right now. The things going on in the vision, the things that he showed me in the 3 visions, and Ellen White documented all 3 of the different visions that he told on separate occasions at separate times. And went to his house, sat with him and his wife. She documented it meticulously. And while the Millerite movement, this is the European body that formed a General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists in 1865, they got that wrong. And all God is showing you is, listen, man, stop letting these individuals who I'm calling to be grafted into me create their own separate narrative of leadership, of supremacy, of being ahead. That's of being the root. Stop being deceived. I am sending people to them to give them an opportunity to get on board, not to create a institution and to create, not like they are Noah and I came to them and gave them a blueprint. It's like the European is saying, yo, unless I could control it, unless we own it, that is white supremacy, yo. They all practice it. It's not of God. And it ain't never gonna get the stamp. And the Most High finally revealed, like, yo, stop giving these cats the benefit of the doubt. Stop giving people a blanket, like, yo, just because people say they Christian. No, they don't have your best interest at heart. That's naive. And they proven
At the turn of the century, allopathic doctors' default medicine was something called the blue pill, which we know today contains 33% toxic mercury. And it was frequently prescribed for almost all conditions, and things like tuberculosis, constipation, toothaches, parasitic infections, childbirth, you name it.
Mercury.
Ironically, Rockefeller, like most people today, flatly refused medicine, and his own personal physician was a homeopathic physician.
So, Rockefeller knew that what he was prescribing for the public was poisonous. And he never used this is the same thing with these Adventists. They got a hospital out in California, Loma Linda. They got doctors that work at Loma Linda. He's a surgeon. His name is Dr. Wareham. 100-something years old. And he take you and he show you his diet and what he eat. He shows you. But he goes to the hospital and he works in the hospital, and the hospital doesn't give the public the same exact thing, the same exact care that he gives himself. They give the public this same John D. Rockefeller medicine. This is where they got it from. This is who they are. When I saw this video, it clicked. They are running the same play. John D. Rockefeller had a holistic medical practitioner, but he changed single-handedly. He invested and built the chemical, pharmaceutical, medical system that you have today. John D. Rockefeller, single-handedly.
On the flip side were empiric healers, or holistic healers. Empiric means to treat based on observation and experience. They believe in stimulating the body's own healing capabilities. They use herbs, homeopathy, manual manipulation, vegetable products, diet, and other such natural treatments. They base their treatments on careful, recorded observations that are often passed through generations of wise humans. The balance of physicians, allopathic and holistic, remained pretty equal through most of American history, until enter John D. Rockefeller. His dark intentions of profit, cloaked in philanthropy, is what grew the medical system that we have today, along with the nonprofit industrial complex.
Listen to that. Please listen to that.
John D. Rockefeller.
Listen to this.
His dark intentions of profit, cloaked in philanthropy.
His dark intentions of profit, cloaked in philanthropy. His dark intentions of profit, cloaked in philanthropy. Now, there's a woman that was a mistress of these. Remember, he's an evangelical Christian, Baptist, steeped in the occult. These are some of the most satanic individuals to ever walk the earth. Evangelical Christians by day, occult Egyptian sun god, Babylonian sun god worshippers in the caves by night. And he had a mistress by the name of Ayn Rand. And Ayn Rand was a philosopher whose philosophy was about what type of mentality we should have towards charity. She wrote the book on European philanthropy, European charity. It is opposite of the gospel. It is opposite of meeting the needs. She talks about altruism. She says altruism is foolish, meaning giving up of oneself, sacrificing self for others. She is only known in the world because it was her job to come out and contradict the gospel. And so they built a system of charity minus love. They specifically built your system of 501c3, non-for-profit philanthropy that is a wealth creator. Tax write-offs instead of meeting needs. So in God's kingdom, you've received your reward. When you do something and you receive a earthly, tangible financial reward for their fake philanthropy, which also causes poverty, because they shelter the true magnitude of wealth that they could be displaying. It's the opposite of what God told the rich young ruler. God told the rich young ruler, give everything you got. So they came and said, that's foolish. Take a small portion of what you got. Make an outward fake show of generosity. We're going to call that philanthropy. And then we're going to give you a safe haven to shelter the rest of your wealth that he told you when you want to demonstrate that you want to come out of the fake phony system that the Europeans created. Then you're going to give everything you received in that system and you're going to give it to the poor. This whole system is designed to go directly against and anybody who operates like this. This is what philanthropy is. Bill Gates and his foundations, this is their philanthropy. All of these billionaires that they tell you, oh, he gave half of his, listen, they give billions of dollars to carry out a goal to prevent us from being fruitful and multiplying. It's called eugenics. Make our women sterile. Third world countries, poor countries, Bill Gates goes all over the world. They call him a philanthropist because he gives billions of dollars to sterilize our women in third world countries. And they call that philanthropy. If y'all want to eat, if y'all want aid from the UN and the World Health Organization, you're going to give up your ability to have children. What? I'm just telling y'all where it came from. I'm showing you where your medical system came from. And they're going somewhere with this. They have an end goal. They have a target number of individuals that they want to stop from having babies. And then they want to take the people who are alive. They got a real number. They want to open up the Roman Colosseum again. And they want to decrease the numbers of people who could be reminded of what their covenant is. This is real, yo. The reason that they got a poison medical industry is because they want you to get sick on diets that they don't even participate in. They want you to be poisoned by medication that they wouldn't even take themselves. You heard him say he don't practice that medicine, but he put the system in place. Why? Because he know they have always been a minority. We are dominant, they are recessive. And before our people wake up and before our people know who they are, they hoping that they can cause a World War I, World War II, where massive people end up losing their lives and the numbers and the populations come back down to a level where they can still control all of the economies of all of these continents and still get to keep the game running.
Is what grew the medical system that we have today, along with the nonprofit industrial complex.
The nonprofit.
Rockefeller in 1892 hired a man named Simon Flexner as the director of his Institute of Medical Research. Simon influenced his brother Abraham Flexner to write a report to be presented to Congress under the auspices of the Carnegie Foundation.
Of the what? Auspices of the Carnegie Foundation. Carnegie was the other richest man in the world during this time. He was the one who built all of the railroads. Industrial Revolution. This is just before World War I. This is all of these dudes is working in concert with the United Nations, Rome, the Vatican. And once again, I'm telling you, you got this Seventh-day Adventist movement. The leaders of this movement. Around the same time, making the same moves that these people making. In 1888, they came to a general conference and they decided, just like the rest of the country was segregated and the rest of the country was saying we was subhuman, 3/5 of a human being. And they came right down in 1888 to a camp meeting and they said the same exact thing. And that same lady that sat at the feet of William Foy, her and her son stood up against these European corporate heads. And while they segregated the country, just like the Baptists did, just like the Methodists did, just like all evangelical Christians did, and then went around bringing in people from all over the world as slaves to parade in human zoos in the United States, in Paris, in Germany, all over the world. Human zoos. This is after supposed emancipation, 1888, 1897, 1902. The only thing that stopped the human zoos was there was more money to be made in going into World War than to be sitting back celebrating the human zoos. This is Christianity, yo. This is Christianity's history, evangelical Christianity's history, yo. And I'm trying to get y'all to understand that they had the same intentions. They're doing the same thing. And if y'all keep following these individuals' spirituality, which is Laodicea, everybody gonna be lost. Everybody. And the playbook is to stand up like that woman and her son did. When the corporate heads went one way, they invested their own money. They did what? They invested their own money. First, they created a magazine. Well, first they invested their own money and they bought a boat. And they're like, if y'all gonna be had the land segregated, whatever happens on the water, you can't control what happens on the water. So they invest in a ship called the Morning Star, and they turn it into a school, a church school, just like God gave Elijah the school of the prophets. Same thing, no different, same playbook. And they sail up and down the Mississippi, the Mississippi River, deep south, Mississippi River. If that ain't a slap in the face on bigotry, on knowing that William Floyd was the one who warned, knowing that a Nubian free individual had warned that was going to be a great disappointment, and had warned that God had given him visions of the second coming. So this whole Advent, looking forward to the second coming, knowing that it came from a person of color, knowing that the credit could not be taken away from the Advent, the looking forward to revelation was given to a Cushite Nubian and not a European. So the gratefulness, the debt that is owed for that revelation coming, for the warning of the great disappointment, for further revelation coming, health message coming. Every European, that's the only response. Every person who has come after Christ, this is the only response that you can have. That's the only response that the world can have to the gospel. These individuals are responsible for us having access to the tree of life. God has used his root children all throughout history to make available the everlasting covenant, and we owe them everything, says Paul. We owe them everything. So they invested, and out of that investment came Oakwood University, came a movement that took the gospel to the ends of the earth between then and now. And these Europeans are still on the same blueprint that they were on in 1830, when they didn't mind turning a blind eye to a human zoo, when they didn't mind receiving knowledge about how to survive and not die in a new world foreign to them. And then they take that knowledge, and instead of giving that knowledge back to people who had been taken away from, they then in turn partner with these satanic individuals and put a poisonous system in place to slow down the fruitfulness. That means you're fighting against God. If God said be fruitful and multiply, and you're actively putting in poisonous systems in place, that you are fighting against God. You are defying God the same way Nimrod did. We want you to look at these Christians in the proper light so that you do not commit these same violations, and so that our people can call our people out of this darkness back into the light of the covenant, and then we could go home.
The point of this report was to mold the medical system in this country to favor their plan to sell snake oil. He used the Carnegie Foundation, a philanthropic organization, as a front, since he needed a layer of deniability between his direct interests and the new system of healthcare that he was rigging.
This is not a Black Panther. This is not a Black Power movement. This is simply an individual that's done the same research that I've done and is simply calling right, right, and wrong, wrong. And he's telling you that the system that you have in place is a system where they created front organizations of philanthropic organizations. So your Food and Drug Administration, your Center for Disease Control, all of these organizations that you think are created to protect have actually been created to undercut and cause sickness. All of the institutions that you put your faith in because they put federal, they put US on it. All of these American businessmen that they teach you to celebrate, Ford, Bill Gates, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, all of them are no different than Pharaoh in Egypt, Herod in Jerusalem, Caesar in Rome. None. They all worship the same pagan gods. They all hate God's covenant. They all hate God's children who are fruitful and multiply. And they all are waging war spiritually to make sure that the work is not finished.
It's important to note that Abraham Flexer was not a medical doctor, a scientist, a teacher, or a medical educator of any kind.
Here it is.
In fact, he was a preacher, making him completely unauthorized to write such a report.
Hold up. One more time. I'm going to rewind it for you again.
Philanthropic organization as a front, since he knew the layer of deniability between his direct interests and the new system of healthcare that he was rigging. It's important to note that Abraham Flexer was not a medical doctor, a scientist, a teacher, or a medical educator of any kind. In fact, he was a preacher, making him complete.
He was a preacher, an evangelical Christian preacher. Because the Roman Catholic Church received a prophetic deadly wound in 1798 and has been operating as Mystery Babylon, the great mother of harlots, under Protestant Christianity ever since. Exclusively in the United States of America. Everywhere else, Colombia, Central America, they still set up shop as Catholicism. The only place in the world, because God had already poured out his Holy Ghost in the United States of America. God had already poured out the same exact spiritual knowledge, the spiritual awakening, the same one that he had poured out at the day of Pentecost, the same one he allowed Martin Luther and them to go through in the 1500s, he allowed to happen in the United States during that same period where he said the deadly wound would happen to Rome. And from the United States of America, the gospel was going to the world already. There's no Seventh-day Adventist denomination in 1798. None. And God was already sending his gospel. That's why I keep telling y'all. Y'all keep listening to that story, that narrative you was brought here. That's a lie. He gave us 1,260 years from 538 to 1798, where he said his people will be out of the reach of the dragon. His people with his gospel. His people with his word. His people who had the Bible. His people who had his everlasting covenant. Out of the reach. And in 1798, we went on offense globally to issue the deadly wound to Rome. meaning Rome had rejected for that 1260-year period the gospel and had done Catholicism. And so God poured out his spirit and had his people from the launch pad of the United States of America take his message. This is why he revealed the second coming to William Floyd in 1830. 1798, God begins his wrapping up the work into all the world, and then the end shall come. Offense, all the world. Piggybacking on that movement was the SDA Inc. Because the doctrines of the SDA Inc. line up the closest with the everlasting gospel. That doesn't make them the remnant. You would have to be there in the beginning to be the remnant. And 1868 ain't the beginning. You're a remnant of what? Remnant of the root in the past. Remnant. So then they lined up and commandeered, but by their fruits ye shall know them. Last thing I'm going to show y'all real quick. They have a scare tactic going on with this documentary. This is just to prove everything I told you.
And the class is... Hi, I'm Douglas Kenning, and the class is The Rape of Europa. And my question in the class is, who are the Phoenicians? There are many answers to that question. The Phoenicians were the guys that Solomon asked to build his temple.
The rape of Europa. So this is what we've been talking about. Once again, this is not me. This was 4 years ago. He made this video 4 years ago. He has a class at a university teaching history. And this is one teacher who's actually teaching that the Phoenicians, Tyre, Carthage, were not Europeans. So Europa, more importantly, Troy, Helen, and the lies about it, he's dispelling the myth.
Why? Because the Hebrews were the country bumpkins come to town, and the Phoenicians were the most cultivated and civilized people in the Middle East. But the Phoenicians were also the ones who put their own worship inside that temple, alongside the worship of the religion of Moses. And thus the Phoenicians are the ones that called the Canaanites in the Bible, are the ones that the Hebrew prophets defined Judaism against. They were the bogeyman. They were the worshippers of Baal, of Astarte, of the gilded calf, of the sacred snake. But the Phoenicians were also the ones who were the greatest middlemen, the greatest traders, the greatest businessmen of the ancient world. And they flew across the Mediterranean in their winged ships. And the Greeks took their story and made it into the Rape of Europa, which is a story of how the Phoenician culture and civilization kick-started the golden age of ancient Greece, brought the Greeks out of their dark ages and began the great classical Greek civilization. The Phoenicians are the ones who sparked that. They ended up in...
Remember, Ezekiel chapter 20, 26. Remember, God had already foretold that the Greeks were going to chastise the Phoenician city of Tyre for rebelling against God's covenant, for being unfaithful. This history is biblical history. They have been lying about our identity. They have been lying. And then when and I don't think he means it on purpose, but when they tell you the story that the Phoenicians are the Baal worshippers and Phoenicians are the one, that is not true. They went astray. This is why God, listen, when your child who knows to do right does wrong, you chastise them. You don't chastise children that don't know no better. You don't hold people accountable who know nothing about right and wrong. They had been blessed to be the greatest nation. They had been blessed with the promise from God that he would expand their territory. But the promises are contingent on faithfulness in the covenant. And when they turned from it, God called the Greeks, who never were in the covenant, to chastise them. And then they told you there was no such thing as Tyre. It's Troy. So all we doing, this has an even more sinister when I get into the heritage and the ancestry thing that Hollywood and these black Greek fraternity and these personalities, radio personalities and these movie stars, they're pushing this ancestry trash. And they're doing the European Hellenism for the Europeans. Especially after Wakanda. All of these so-called black movie stars and black Greek pagans are telling people about fake ancestry that always leads to the enslaved continent after 1885. They always want people to identify only with the periods of time when Europe colonized Africa, or when the people in the word were in idolatry and being chastised by God. That's the only time they want us as people of color to identify with anything. And that's deception.
The Western Mediterranean, and they became the Carthaginians. And they are the ones that the Romans,
That's important.
the golden age of ancient Greece, brought the Greeks out of their dark ages and began the great classical Greek civilization. The Phoenicians are the ones who sparked that. They ended up in the Western Mediterranean, and they became the Carthaginians. And they are the ones that the Romans turned and defined themselves against. And one of the great titanic struggles of all history was the Romans and the Carthaginians in the Punic Wars. All of this is part of the religion, the story of the Phoenicians. So who were the Phoenicians? Perhaps the most effective middlemen in history, middlemen of business, middlemen of culture, and thus
Middleman of business, middlemen of the covenant, the everlasting covenant, the firstborn of Noah, who God said would judge in these final generations. The men of Nineveh will judge this final generation. This is also a Phoenician city, Nineveh. All right, so remember what I just showed y'all about the medical establishment, right? John D. Rockefeller set up a fake philanthropic institution through the Carnegie Foundation and created Food and Drug Administration, Center for Disease Control, all of these federal agencies who are supposed to be monitoring and validating that the medicines, that these poisons that they're making are okay for human consumption. So now, because the population is growing by leaps and bounds in people of color, and the Europeans' population is decreasing, the birth rates in every European country has plummeted. So they're in crisis mode. So now these individuals, since the 90s is when they launched the European Union. The 90s is also when they went to Rome and they put an agenda together. And prior to the 90s, Bill Gates' father at IBM aided Adolf Hitler in exterminating thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people during the Holocaust by giving him technology to be able to target the ghettos and the populations and the people of color with Scantron sheets and counting machines. IBM went to concentration camp after concentration camp and helped them organize who they were exterminating. And also, his father, Bill Gates' father, was a major investor in the Eugenics Society of the United States of America. If y'all don't know anything about the Eugenics Society, a lady by the name of Margaret Stringer, they called us useless eaters at the time. And the eugenics movement is to sterilize people of color, abort babies of people of color. And of course, during the 1930s, they were using Darwin's theory of evolution to justify the extermination, meaning they are subspecies, subhuman. Yeah, you heard me. Bill Gates' father, Bill Gates Sr., IBM exec, they made their family wealth off of aiding Germany in exterminating and launching a global eugenics movement, which Bill Gates is still being paid as a philanthropist to manage to this day. Eugenics is the extermination of people of color based off Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, survival of the fittest. We are superior, they are inferior, they are subhuman, and so they should not be allowed to reproduce. They should not be allowed to have babies. And all of these companies invested billions of dollars in the medical system. The Carnegie Foundation invested billions of dollars in the eugenics movement. The Rockefellers invested billions of dollars in the eugenics movement. And this medical establishment system was created by John D. Rockefeller to hide the tracks of the history of this sterilization and extermination program called eugenics in federal agencies that you would believe were created to promote healthy living. The problem is when they talk about all men are created equal, they're talking about all Germanic men. They are speaking in Darwin's theory of evolutionary language. So when they say we put together a constitution, all men are created equal, they know that all of their people already know we're not talking about the subspecies. We already identified who is subhuman, non-human, who is 3/5 of a human. We put that in the constitution right next to all men are created equal. We don't have to come back and clarify. We already stated. We've already demonstrated with the blood. And still to this day, in the age of information, y'all still have trust in these systems. Who have a plan to ramp back up sterilization and extermination back to World War I levels. World War II levels. What does that mean, yo? God's children got to ramp up their covenant back to Joseph levels, back to Daniel levels, back to David's levels, back to Hezekiah levels, back to Gideon levels. We know the playbook. This ain't new. When you try any other play, when you try your Western philosophy, you're going to get gobbled. You're going to be devoured. When you put your faith in your Western education, you're going to be devoured. When you put your faith in your Western degree, you're going to be devoured because you're following. You put your faith in your Western job, you're going to be devoured. In your bank account, you're going to be devoured. In your Western Christian denomination, you're going to be devoured. Because it's not before Abraham was, I am. Christ ain't come in no denomination. He ain't operate in no corporation. And no 501c3 entity that has allegiance to the state where it's registered in. Come on, just do the knowledge, yo. His allegiance was in his father. His business was registered in his father's house. You have made my father's house a den of thieves. Oh, he had a business. He told you he had a business. It's just these corporations and these businesses don't line up with the Father's business. So we ain't supposed to have nothing to do with him. He got a business. I must be about my Father's business. And he rebuked his earthly father, trying to put him to work. So any earthly entity trying to put us to work, he rebuked his earthly father, Joseph, trying to put him to work, hindering him from carrying out his father's business, his heavenly father's business. That's the blueprint. That's permission to overthrow the tables of the money changers. So here go the scare tactic. This is what all this is for. All right?
We should praise the Chinese government's swift action. We should praise the Chinese government's swift action during this crisis. No, we shouldn't. When China says everything's being taken care of and to not panic, that is precisely the time that people need to take action into their own hands. We'd be foolish to believe the infection figures that come out of the state media from China. The cases are now in the high thousands, which means that this disease, in fact, this coronavirus, is more transmissible than SARS. What's even more worrying is that the death rate from this virus seems to be about double the recovery rate, which means that we don't know the actual percentage or odds of fatality from the coronavirus. And we've been seeing videos spreading like wildfire around social media that shed a bit more of a realistic light on how bad it actually is. I've been in constant contact with people in Wuhan as well as people in affected areas where the government has declared that there are no infected individuals. As I stated in my previous video, the situation is, in fact, much worse than is being reported. Let's look at a timeline of what happened to see how slowly it's been dealt with and how the information was actively suppressed. On December 8th, the first case was reported in Wuhan. On December 30th, the central government sent a team of experts to Wuhan to investigate.
December 8th to December 30th. Now remember, when I started off, I told you 5 years ago, I got an article 5 years ago where eugenics manager Bill Gates, sterilization king Bill Gates, was talking about the greatest threat is a pandemic that could kill 66 million. So if it starts unfold, if he's been talking about this for 5 years and it starts going down, and on December the 8th, the first case is identified, how, if he's been talking about it for 5 years, how have he been investing billions in it for 5 years? And what y'all need to know, I ain't got time to go into it tonight. I'm going to show y'all the headquarters of the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers is China. They've been in China since the 90s when Rome signed the European Union. The Rothschilds and the Rockefellers been operating colonialism, global colonialism, called globalism, from China. Every attack on the U.S., every beef, listen. Where the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds are, that is London. Where London is, that is the purse of the Vatican. The very first central bank of the Vatican, London. Then they created the U.S. Federal Reserve. They created a Federal Reserve Bank in every nation around the globe except 4. The International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, Chase, Manhattan is the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. So they hide their children and their banking dynasty under institutions called the Center for Disease Control. I already showed you John D. Rockefeller set up the Food and Drug Administration. Center for Disease Control. They hide their children. Their children manage these fake quasi-federal institutions on behalf of London and Great Britain's continued colonialism and defiance and attack when God said he would send his bride into a place prepared for her out of the reach of the dragon. They are saying, we're going to track down his bride. The dragon was wroth with the woman and went to wage war with the remnant of her seed who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. We're going to wage war with the covenant of God, the bride of God, the remnant of her seed. We are going to wage war. We are going to exterminate. We are going to poison. We are going to infiltrate. We are going to masquerade as evangelical Christians. We are going to get as close as we can. We're going to pick off as many as we can. We're going to do whatever we can. And if they don't wake up, that's their loss. If they get deceived, that's on them. What we going to do, family? We just going to let our brothers and sisters be deceived? We just going to let them, we just going to let them poison and exterminate? Ain't nobody going to sound a cry. Ain't nobody going to, not only is we going to sound a warning cry, we going on offense. Not only is we on offense, we taking the people back through the same exact steps that the people was taken through every time where this same attack has been brought against them. With the same economy, with the same positioning to make Michael stand up and pour out the Holy Ghost, the Lord of hosts. It first takes cleansing. Next, it takes worship, cheerleading. Joshua marched around Jericho and sung praises, and the walls came down. Then the fight ensued. Cleansing. They got baptized in the Jordan first before they set foot on the bank, before they ran up to Jericho. Cleansing. Transformation. Transfiguration. Replenishment. Restoration. Reparations. Renewal. Repentance. Sacrifice. That's all in cleansing. That's the very first step. When he says come out and be separate, that cleansing is the separation. They are filthy. They lawless. Come out and be ye set. Cleanse. First thing. First thing. I will put enmity. Cleansing is the enmity. Naming the leper. Naming the leper. You want to be healed? You person of color? You Nubian? You want to be healed? Cleanse. Then I could do something with you. Then you worship. You cheerlead. Then you go clean house. Every speck of idolatry. Every speck of these strangers, counterfeit gospel. Clean house, top to bottom. You sweep it clean. First you cleanse your sanctuary in and out. Then you clean the Father's house. Your dwelling place. Your estate. I can't pour out my blessings on your family, your children, your wife, your income, you're going out, you're coming in. Your estate is tarnished. Then you prepare to fight. Then you prepare to stand. Then you prepare to be David. Then you go select the 5 stones. Go prepare to plunder. Turn over the tables of the money changers. And I may or may not use you, but you have to put yourself in position. You have to ready and prepare your heart and your mind to be ready to go to war on my behalf against the lawless. Most of the time when you get to the battlefield, just to show you and them that I am the Most High God and I will repay. Most of the time, I will always rout the lawless supernaturally. And all you're going to be there to do is to be tested to see what you're going to do with the new increase of plunder that I'll let you take from the lawless. Are you going to do like the children of Israel and then go and build the golden calf? After being set free, and when I let you finally touch some free plunder and wealth of Egypt, first thing you do is build the golden calf and worship? God said you going to battle. Every step of this is going to be a test to see if you 100% is a faithful bride to me, or are you a harlot like Saul, King Saul? Are you a faithful bride? I don't need you to go to war. I don't need you to do nothing. But I need you to prove that you are as much in love with me and in my covenant that I am with you. And I'm here to tell you that these clowns right here, they ain't nowhere near what we talking about. They as empty ritual as the Pharisees and the Sadducees was who killed the Messiah on the cross. And now they playing games with people's lives like they did with Hitler in World War I and like they did in World War II. They are playing with people's lives and they hoping to scare you to death in order to give the United Nations, the European Union, and the Pope authority to make laws globally. They want you to be so scared of this threat that when they tell you, yo, you need to go out and get your child vaccinated. The same death that Bill Gates is shooting our people up with in third world countries. They're hoping that they can scare you into. And then those of us who want to stand up, they hoping to scare the rest of the world enough into giving them the power to legislate and force everybody to do what it is they want them to do. This is just another ploy in the whole world. Being forced to take the mark of the beast. They do it with climate change. They got a path to do it with climate change. They got a path to do it with natural disasters, like another hurricane, Katrina. They got plans in place to do it with financial crisis. They got plans in place to do it whether it's civil war, world war. And they also got plans in place to do it through pandemics and health scares. Take your pick. So if God's children don't have a plan in place on how to finish the work and get these babies across the goal line, when you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And when you plan to fail in this game, it's for everlasting life.
January 1st, the Chinese government arrested 8 people for talking about the virus. The first priority was for the government to crack down on rumors, but the rumors that were being punished were the fact that the virus existed and was a threat to actual people, not the rumors telling people that they would be cured if they drank garlic water. On January 11th, the first death was reported. On January 14th, media who reported on the cases in Wuhan were arrested by police and had their phones and cameras searched for any information regarding.
Yo, this is Nazi Germany, yo. Live present day, this is Nazi Germany. They arrest people who told the truth. Yo, somebody just got sick in the province. Then they got people in the same time out there talking about garlic or heal it. They don't get arrested. But the media that reported that somebody died from the actual outbreak, this means they're trying to give it time to spread. Once again, Bill Gates came out 5 years ago in 2015 talking about a pandemic could kill 66 million people. Then you have reports of a possible pandemic going in supposedly the most densely populated place on earth, China, and nobody's responding. December 8th to January 14th. That's more than 30 days.
The disease. On January 18th, the Wuhan government held a 100,000 person banquet where people all ate from the same dishes, 3 miles from where the virus was confirmed to have come from.
So they tell you a pandemic has an incubation time. This is all the propaganda, you know what I'm saying? Has an incubation time where shows no signs that it can be passed. So they hold a 100,000 person banquet 3 miles from the place where they already arresting people for reporting that somebody died. Then you're going to have 100,000 people. Come on, man. This is artificial. I told you, we respond to man-made disasters. So if they do have a pandemic going on out there, they have purposely, during the incubation time, subjected 100,000 people and accelerated artificially the spread of a pandemic that they claim to be warning us. They claim that they're philanthropists investing in. This is Bill Gates said he retired from Microsoft to spend $40 billion to eradicate diseases and pandemics. This is what he claimed. So what he's saying is, I'm full-time investing in the spread of diseases and pandemics. I'm interpreting.
This was 2 days after 49 cases had been made public. On January 19th, Chinese officials stated that the disease wasn't very infectious and that there was nothing to worry about. On January 21st, the government held a Chinese New Year celebration where multiple performers fell ill, but the state media regarded them as having great spirit because they didn't stop the performance. On January 22nd, the government asked people in Wuhan to wear masks. However, the rules for mask wearing have just now become an official rule. They have to enforce it through fines because the populace has to be coerced to follow the rules due to lack of education. On January 23rd, the city was quarantined and no one was allowed to leave. However, 5 million people had already left.
So I just want y'all to know, if people start getting ill and it starts spreading around America, y'all need to let the people know. Y'all need to let the people know. These cats artificially manufactured this whole situation. 5 million people was allowed to leave. So just know, you start hearing it spread all over the world, just know, this is a man-made, artificial pandemic. And so if it turns out that this is just a warning, if our people don't start preparing for real, if y'all let this slide by and y'all continue to act as if this fake narrative of the US and fake narrative of, listen, man, these individuals got a spiritual agenda of defiance. And if you don't meet the principalities that he told you wrestle with the same spirit of those who defeated these principalities in the past, there is no chance for victory. There is no chance for success. If we not moving the same way the Creator moved, the same way when he poured out his spirit. Listen, yo, it's no way. When Paul got to Timothy, it was no way Timothy was going to keep on doing what Timothy was doing. Paul came with the word, and Timothy left his pagan, idolatrous life. Timothy was a Greek pagan.
On the same day, Wuhan airport had closed, but before this, it allowed people to board if they had no symptoms like fever. It's important to know that scientists have been saying that people may be able to spread the disease without showing symptoms, yet people were still allowed to board and leave Wuhan. On January 27th, the mayor of Wuhan said he would step down. Now the central government is being lauded as the only government in the world that could have dealt with this so swiftly. The mayor of Wuhan has been chastised, hung out to dry, and is the sole responsible figure for this cover-up. And the rest of China was now allowed to hate him. He was publicly shamed and is quoted in saying that he has to accept full responsibility for what happened. That's the thing. The government didn't care about the people or the...
And the thing y'all need to know about China is a communist government. Meaning, China central government controls everything. There's no mayor in control of nothing. And the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds own the Chinese since the 90s. The mayor of Wuhan is a fall guy. They're experimenting with the lives of the world. And they got fall guys. And y'all better learn how to start connecting these dots. Because y'all better learn how to start teaching these next generation how to hold people accountable.
For health security modeled a hypothetical. Hello viewers, welcome to Scopic World YouTube channel, and in this video we will discuss about how US health experts predicted coronavirus 3 months ago and how Bill Gates predicted Chinese coronavirus a year ago with simulations saying 33 million could die in first 6 months. Leading US health experts predicted coronavirus could kill 65 million people in a year. In chilling warning 3 months before the outbreak in China, US health experts predicted a coronavirus could kill tens of millions of people in a chilling warning 3 months before the deadly outbreak in China. Scientists at the prestigious Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security modeled a hypothetical pandemic on a computer as part of research last October.
Johns Hopkins University is a Rockefeller-invested university. Johns Hopkins University is owned, operated, has always been a part of this philanthropic John D. Rockefeller trash system.
Simulation predicted 65 million people from every corner of the world would be wiped out in just 18 months. So far, the highly contagious disease currently ravaging China has killed 41 people and infected more than 1,200, but experts predict the true number to be thousands. Dr. Eric Toner, a senior researcher at Johns Hopkins, said he wasn't shocked when news of the coronavirus outbreak in Wuhan in late December. I have thought for a long time that the most likely virus that might cause a new pandemic would be a coronavirus, he told Business Insider. We don't yet know how contagious it is. We know that it is being spread person to person, but we don't know to what extent. An initial first impression is that this is significantly milder than SARS. So that's reassuring. On the other hand, it may be more transmissible than SARS, at least in the community setting. Bill Gates predicted a super virus pandemic breaking out in China that could kill 33 million people around the world in the first 6 months. The Microsoft tycoon warned the world was at risk from super pathogens spreading quickly across our planet, and that we should prepare for this as we would for war. Speaking at a conference hosted by the Massachusetts Medical Society, Gates said he was an optimist, but there was one area the world was not making much progress. He said, and that's pandemic preparedness. In the case of biological threats, that sense of urgency is lacking. The world needs to prepare for pandemics in the same serious way it prepares for war. During the conference, the billionaire philanthropist unveiled an exhaustive study by the Institute for Disease Modeling.
All right, so just to be clear, when they was doing these same games in the Cold War with that fake manufactured, same artificial fake setup they had with the Soviet Union, they had our schools trained to go through bomb drills. They had our parents trained. When you hear the siren, they all knew where the fallout shelter was. They had drills where they would So at some point, we're going to have to get serious, y'all. At some point, we're going to have to understand that we're dealing with individuals who are just like Pharaoh. They look over at Goshen and they see the fruitfulness of the children of God as a threat. And they want to send the armies over to kill and stop that population from growing. There's nothing new under the sun. So all God is requiring for us to do is dedicate our daily lives to Him, enter into His covenant, be faithful. But more importantly, in the U.S., we are supposed to resurrect the spirit of all of the dominant, victorious individuals that led the people into victory over these fake imposters. But it's our job to do it on a global scale. So you have a microeconomic level and a macroeconomic level of this preparedness. Microeconomic level is the details of the transformation, the details of the day-to-day blessings that come through the women, the wives' covenant with God. So when the husband and the wife both are locked in and in tune to both of their blessings and the two become one, you have a microeconomic blessing through the birthright that guarantees that the talents that he invested in y'all will produce land flowing with milk and honey. And then you have the first fruit blessing, the expansion of territory, the ability to reclaim the Father's houses and the Father's cattle on 1,000 hills and the lost sheep, to expand and uproot and replace the lawlessness and cleanse and tear down the shrines and cleanse the land and rededicate and reconsecrate. And we're taking the people through the reconsecration process 2020. And as we take more land, we take back these cities, our ladies are supposed to touch and agree with us. They supposed to return back to their covenant. And they supposed to train our children on how to cleanse the house, how to bring forth a return on them investments, how to grow them talents, to bring a harvest and bring in first fruit and increase. And when we bring this offense and this defense together, the macroeconomics of the man expanding the border, that's the defense. The microeconomics is the offense. When we bring these two together, we're going to win this championship. That's what we on daily. All right.